Hello guys, I am back from another video, and today we're talking about what if I was in My Hero Academia. So, in the last video, well, apparently the Hell, Heaven, and also Monster Alliance have been attacking some countries, and also a girl from that country, or that alliance, came to the Yakuza and literally you know, defiled one of the Yakuza leaders, specifically Overhaul, and killed them in cold blood. Yeah, and many other heroes from different countries tried to, up, like, upper hand them, but unfortunately they were either slaughtered, defiled, decapitated, crucified, burned alive, many things, many other heroes, they were specifically killed. But when they were battle, when they see a quirkless person, they would either just throw them into a truck or just help them out by bringing them into a truck or something like that. And apparently they're in human settlements that are only for the quirkless, which is weird to them. So after All for One saw this, he decided to bring up a letter of a peace treaty between heroes and villains in case of a brand new threat, a threat that's even more dangerous than All for One himself. So, when they made it to UA High, everybody was concerned, thinking that he's about to attack us, specifically the heroes and the heroes in training. But he clarifies, saying that he wants to make an alliance. No longer no longer they shall be divided, but now together, because this threat is greater than All for One. And so the end of that episode. And so let's talk about what happens next. So they were in a large room with a projector, as everybody was weirded out that the League of Villains are here. As Baka would say this is pretty weird, brother. As he would say this. Agreed. Like, seriously. There's literally the League of Villains for this. I mean, I'm not complaining, at least, as he would look towards, wait for a sec, Izumi. As Izumi would say this, oh, hi. She looks kind of sad. As Dabi would try and defend her. Hey, what are you looking at her for that? Like, what are you looking at? As he would say this, oh, well, we were childhood friends, and I'm surprised that you would ever defend her. I would have just imagined that you would, as he would say this, what do you think? I'm her boyfriend. As one of them would say this, wait, you're her boyfriend? As Dabi would say this, obviously, after you decided to not join us, well, I decided to comfort her, and now she's just super clingy to me. And so, I decided to become her boyfriend. And everybody was weirded out. As I would say this, alright, enough with the talking. Alright, we should start continuing our discussion about this brand new threat. As he would explain that these three people seem to be pretty important, being Deos, Lavenza, and finally, Typhon. As he would say this, I think they're probably the most powerful people in these specific worlds. One of them is Hell, being Lavenza, the other one being Heaven, Deos, and finally, we have the Monster Realm, or Fairy Realm, or whatever you want to call it, because the Fairy Realm and the Monster Realm are technically connected. And that was the realm of Typhon. As they're pretty much weirded out about this, thinking that it's almost sounding like a fantasy. As one of them being, Ochaka would say this. So, if we're gonna be fighting these guys, but these seem to have quick canceling weapons or something. Like, every other hero seemed to be quite useless against them. because their bullets or whatever seem to be quirk canceling. As he would say this, exactly, as he would bring in some, well, people, being Mr. Shield, and finally, well, wait for a second, David Shield. Sorry about that. And so, after being told of this, they started, well, talking, as they see that these are specially created bullets that can cancel out quirks. As everybody was shocked, as Melissa would say, this. It seems to be made out of this powder, and these special metals seem to be made out of these weird scales. Apparently, after analyzing it, and after, like, a hero beating a dragon, which was surprising to me because, dragons don't exist, it seemed to be made out of the same material. Apparently, the hero told me that this metal, or these scales of this dragon, seemed to be blocking his quirk, being, well, the hero at the time had an explosion quirk, but not like Bakugo's. Instead, it's nuclear, like, explosions. As he tried to, like, beat down the dragon, the scales keep falling off and regrowing, like a lizard's tail when it gets ripped off. Or was it a gecko? I can't remember. So, after they were told of this, well, Momo started, well, brainstorming. As for, Izuku, as, well, Hajime was still weirded out that these monsters, these mythical beasts from legend, from mythology, were actually real. As, well, Melissa will continue. Melissa told them that these monsters seem to be, well, controlled by these leaders. As she would bring out pictures of each of the leaders, as only one was named, being Izuku Midoriya, aka Mobster, but the others are being named by their code names. First is a gas mask wearing kid, and also seems to be wearing almost clothing from the 1960s, specifically biker like clothing, like greasers, as he seems to be, well, his hands seem to be cut off, and every time when he uses his, well, not really quirk, because they think it's probably at this point, because one of them got in his blood, and apparently that was not a quirk. Apparently that was something else. Apparently his blood is like napalm, which is basically like sticky grenades, but in liquid form. Like, if you try to get this thing off, it just sticks to you even more. And when it's, well, ignited, well, let's just say things get even more bad. Just look at the Vietnam War. Yeah. So, they would say that it's probably even more powerful than Bakugo's quirk, as Bakugo would get a bit angry because he has a superiority complex, as Hajime would calm him down. As the, other person was, well, another, well, member of the Inferno Knights. So, one of them would say this, so, these guys are known as the Inferno Knights, right? As she would say this, yes. As she would explain, as the other member seems to be two sisters, seeming to, well, work together. One of them seems to be a woman with large gauntlets and seemed to be wearing, bad German clothing. Take a bet. Take a guess what bad German means. I'll wait. I'll give you a hint. They're from World War II. Anyway, so the other person seems to be also wearing, well, clothing, but specifically Russian style clothing that, like, similarly to, like, like the typical, like, Russian person, like, like, fluffy, like, winter clothing, but she's also wielding a large sword and seems to be wearing a half and half mask. As they would tell them that their code names are Steel, being the one that's wearing the bad German clothing, and the other one is called Stille, which is the German word for steel, which was a pretty dumb idea in her opinion. As we moved on to another member, she seems to be, well, quite, wait for a second, quite dangerous as well. She seems to be a bit more terrifying in battle. She seems to be like a ninja, and not those ninjas, the ones that are like fictional and wear black clothing, but instead is the type that uses her, well, charm and kills people by using these razor sharp, well, blades that she wields and puts in her, well, special compartment in her clothing, as she uses in conjunction with her persona, as they're calling them. After, well, after Hajime hears that, he would say this, wait, personas? As they would say this, really? It sounds like you, as he would say this, yeah, that sounds familiar, but, actually, it sounds like my quirk. As they would say this, really? Yeah, it says, Hajime. Wait for a second. As he would always, like, he would tell what his quirk is, or at least his quote-unquote quirk, as they would think it's probably something, well, relating to their powers or something. As they would explain a little bit more. Apparently, her persona's name is Amaterasu, named after the Japanese goddess of the sun, as they think it's probably a, well, a hint to her weakness. But unfortunately, they don't know her weakness yet, and I mean yet. So, and then we moved on to another member. She seems to be almost robotic. She speaks in a cold tone, like a robot, as her skin is able to melt and turn into liquid metal, almost like the, Terminators from, you know, which Terminator movie? I forgot. Can you please write in the comments which Terminator movie from that, like, which Terminator was that? The one that's literally, like, liquid metal and can shapeshift? Yeah, that one. As she seems to be called, either, well, Emma or Neil. As apparently, she's also seemed to be also called the, well, a simulacrum, which they realized, which was a word for a robot that acts similar to a human. Almost like a cyborg or, android or something like that. As they think it's probably a robot that seems to act like a human and think like a human, as she seems to be using a persona. This persona was called Azrael, which apparently, after researching about it, is apparently named after the angel of death in mythology. Yeah, it's probably a, they probably think it's weakness, or think it, like, hints at her weakness, but unfortunately not yet. They don't have a, solid evidence for their weaknesses, unless, says, Melissa, as she would say this, maybe their weakness is probably either emotion or something like that. As she would look at Izuku, as she would say this, Izuku, I meant not Izuku, I meant Hajime, god damn it, I keep forgetting their names. I mean, they are the protagonists of the series. I'm not really used to, like, calling, like, Hajime Izuku yet, like, or, Izuku to Hajime, or whatever. So I'll try and keep, like, doing it, okay? Good. So, she looks at Hajime as she would say this. Do you have any idea? Because they seem to have a similar ability to you. After all, your quirks seem to be quite similar. God dang it. Wait for a second, guys. As he would say this. Yes, I think I kind of have a weakness. I think maybe either that I'm weak to, yeah. I think I might be either, weak towards, well, people that are pretty much, like, powerful enough to basically beat me down. as one of them would say this. That doesn't give us any leads. As he would say this. Oh, I know. I did remember, like, a person that was, well, let's just say a bit emotional, and it kind of hurt me for a second. As one of them would say this. So, maybe they're quite weak emotions, or pretty, well, extreme emotions, says, Kamei Woods. As Mount Lady says this. I guess you're right. As one of them says this. Alright, either way, we're gonna move on to the other members. Specifically, this girl, which they think is probably the culprit for the death of, the death of, well, Overhaul. As they see a young girl in, like, she seems to be 17 in age. She is wearing, like, really vulgar clothing under, like, yellow raincoat. She seems to be wearing a bunny mask, like a bunny mask, with a upside down cross in the middle of that mask. As they say that this woman, or this creepy ass girl, seems to have the codename Seducer. As apparently her persona, every time when she summons it, seems to be the name known as Agrafontes, which, after researching, is apparently a epithet of Hermes, the Greek god of messaging, or, well, thievery. Apparently, after researching, the name comes from after, well, saving, well, a girl by the name of Io from a giant by the name wait for a second, Argro, and not Agris or, Argo. It's Agris. So, after getting that name, he was given the epithet wait for a second, goddamn. Agrafontes, which means Argo or Agro Slayer. Yeah, I think that's probably the name. And apparently the persona looks like a creepy amalgamation of metal and disgusting parts. Apparently the torso seems to be made out of this skin-like material that's pure black with several eyes. The mask resembles me, but instead of like normal-ish rabbit ears, instead it's replaced with bat-like ears. Apparently the shoulder pads seem to be more Greek in aesthetic, as one arm seems to be engraved with, well, symbols, or should I say, Greek lettering, as the arm that's engraved with Greek lettering seemed to be, I don't know, a frickin' large arm that's literally a gigantic ass sword. The knees seem to have bat-like wings, as the feet, or specifically the heels, seem to be attached to sharp, sharp blades, as one arm seems to be more animalistic, with sharp claws and stained, well, blood-stained, wait for a second, blood-stained nails that are red and crimson to the touch. Everybody was terrified after seeing the description, as everybody decided to get some rest for now, and so everybody started going to the dorms, as the League of Villains were told, well, that bluntly, that they're going to be staying in the dorms because they don't want them escaping and also causing some chaos on the streets. As All For One would say this, why? We're not going to be doing anything, suspicious, and besides, if we do, we're probably going to get targeted. As they would say this, but still. And so, they were told to go in to the dorms. Wait for a second. So, Izuku decided to go to his room as he looks into it, as he sees Jiro, Momo, and Kendo. Yeah, let's just say Izuku is completely pissed off, as they said that they're going to be staying here because Dabi and Izuku were going to be staying in the same room. That seems a bit suspicious. And by the way, I'm not saying the S word because I'm not going to say that because it sounds freaking cringe. I swear to God, I hate, you know, I hate Among Us. I hate it. Just all of the memes, everything about it. I just don't like it. So, after being told of this, he has to stay in a room with all three girls, each of them pretty much beautiful in their own way. Momo being the most beautiful, and also being quite rich. For, well, Jiro, she seems a bit, well, tomboyish, but she has her charm. And finally for Kendo, Kendo is kind, beautiful, and does whatever she can to save people. A true hero at heart. And Hajime was starting to blush a little bit, as he starts rubbing the back of his head, neck, and says, "Oh, what are you doing here?" As they would say this, "Oh, we're supposed to stay here." Apparently, well, two people are, of the League of Villains are apparently going to be staying over there. As he would say this, guess I'll be staying with you guys. As they would say this, yeah, unfortunately. And so, they stayed in the same bed as they wake up the next day. The next day, they were seeing on the news that several different countries are, well, being impaled with these spikes. As these spikes, on top of them, seem to be large palaces, each representing, well, wait, different palaces, each having architectures similarly to, well, the architecture of Hell, Heaven, and the Monster Realm. Wait for a second again. The architecture seemed to be similarly to each of each of the realms or worlds that are aligned with each other. And they are seven. Seven of each. And each one are from different countries now. They're currently in different countries. One spike is in, well, wait for a second. Seem to be, one of them, one of these spikes or palaces seemed to be in South America. And another one in, well, China. And for another example, another one in Russia, a really cold part in Russia specifically. Another one in, well, Greece specifically, where supposedly Atlantis used to be. And another one seems to be right next to, wait for a second, seems to be in England, specifically Britain, where supposedly fairies used to live. Yeah. Everybody was shocked after these, well, pillars or spikes or whatever, or these palaces, well, were erected. As when they go to that little space, about a few miles, into this, well, space, when they get into there, they seem to have changed the area. The area changes into, well, almost like a magical place. Like, for example, in North America, it resembles when the Mayans and many other people back in the day that used to live. And apparently they were governed by these were-jaguars and many other, wait for a second, lichenids. Like, for example, werewolves, were-hogs, and many other creatures. But when the quirk users arrived, let's just say they were slaughtered by the locals of this world, or this little area of this world, and also by these lichenids, seeming to have hostile thoughts towards these people, specifically quirk users. Or for another example, in the Russian part of where the Russian palace where it used to be, there's this gigantic monster that resembles a puppet somewhat. As this woman seemed to be, well, a woman with a black mask where resided, where she's wearing a, well, wait for a second, wielding a immense hatred towards the quirk users. She also seemed to have pure white wings like an angel. And for another example is in the, well, in, actually, wait for a second. In one example, one of these spikes was in Scandinavia, where there was these large, terrifying creatures that resemble these, well, Vikings come from the dead, as when they stab into a person, they turn them into monsters. Like, for an example, when a woman gets stabbed by them, they would turn into these almost witch-like creatures. As everybody was terrified, everybody was scared, as they see each of the rulers are actually one of the inverted knights. Like, for an example, in the, well, South American one, apparently it's currently being governed by Izuku Midoriya, the Knight of Superbia, or the Knight of the Superbia family. And for another example, in the Chinese, world, or the Chinese, palace, it's currently being governed by, wait for it. It's currently being governed by Seducer. And for another example, in the Russian, part, it's currently being governed by Stella, as she's ruling it as a Staresa, basically a Russian queen, where she rules it with an eye similarly to a famous Russian Tsar, specifically the Great Tsar, also known as Ivan the Terrible. So, basically, each of these countries seem to be inhabiting, like, several of these, large palaces, and if they go closer to them, they go into a magical, pocket dimension that seem to be, each associated with that country and also that palace. Like, for an example, the Chinese one seems to be back when, a certain Chinese emperor was ruling it and being a tyrant, and seemed to be horrible and mean to his subjects, giving them no knowledge, and even before when the rebellion started. So, yeah, each of these places are being governed by each of the Inferno Knights, each of them ruling it with their own tyrannical rules. So, this is basically the end of this episode, because everybody is currently now scared and currently getting ready to be dispatched there, thanks to the help of some heroes. Some of these heroes were told that they're going to be bringing in some Japanese heroes from other other countries, heroes, for example, Stars and Stripes are going to be going to South America, or another example, Burnin is going to be going to the Chinese palace or something like that, basically like that. So that's basically the end of this episode. So I hope you liked the video, comment, and subscribe, and also don't forget to like the video so you can support my channel, and I hope to see you guys next time. Bye bye.